which I think is an appropriate song for all this because he'll heal them in his time. It's not our time, it's his time. Oh, you got to put up with me Sunday too, by the way. So you got to put up with me Sunday too, because I'm filling in for Todd. So. In his time, he makes all things beautiful. In his time, Lord, please show me every day as you're teaching me your way, that you do just what you'll say in your time. In your time, in your time, you make all things beautiful. In your time, Lord, my life to you I bring. May each song I have to sing be to you a lovely thing in your time. Then we'll do the 626. This is for the preacher. I love to tell the story. I think about these before I pick them. I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and his glory, of Jesus and his love. I love to tell the story because I know 'tis true. It satisfies my longing as nothing else can do. I love to tell the story. 'Twill be my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. I love to tell the story, 'tis pleasant to repeat what seems each time I tell it more wonderfully sweet. I love to tell the story, for some have never heard the message of salvation from God's own holy word. I love to tell the story. 'Twill be my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. I love to tell the story for those who know it best. Seems hungering and thirsting to hear it like the rest. And when in scenes of glory I sing the new song, 'twill be the old story tell the story. 'Twill be my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. Okay, do we need to move this out? Let me go there and mute. She's going to mute it first.
Am I on? Good. Good evening. I get to. I usually do it about where Jack is and then face it that way. Yeah. How are y'all this evening? Good. So, I'm not really prepared well tonight. And there's a story behind that. We left. I had a training that I have to go to every year for tech ed, and so we went up to Tulsa Sunday afternoon, and we got there, and there was nobody in line to register. And we got our room, and last year there were people there until like 11 o'clock at night trying to get a room. I mean, it was just packed. And I thought that was kind of strange that, I mean, we got there a little early, but not that much early. And so I got my little stuff out and started looking at what I was going to, the conferences and stuff I was going to the next day and what time and all that stuff. Yeah, my conferences were Tuesday and Wednesday, not Monday and Tuesday. So I had to go and get an extra night at the hotel. Had to go buy another shirt because I didn't have enough clothes to wear all week. And then, so we had a day of just kind of relaxing, running around, doing stuff. And then we went to the thing. Well, it wasn't over till 4 o'clock this afternoon. But I left about, 2:15, because the last session thing was not anything I stayed for it last year, and it was not worth staying for. So we drove home, got out of the car, went in, said hello to grandkids because they were there, and turned around and got out and came here. So I thought I'd have all day Wednesday to get this ready. Luckily, I had some of this already done, and I've just looked at a couple more things. So anyway, what was your favorite thing you read about God this week? Character, your God shot this past week. Yes. Gave Hezekiah 15 more years. No, he didn't. Yeah.
What I think about the book of Isaiah is that we've got more prophecies of Christ.
Yes.
Than any other prophet.
Yeah. More. I believe that's right. Especially 52, 53, and then 60, 61, 62, somewhere in there. But 52 and 53 is all about his crucifixion, and it is very, very specific, and that's one of the things I want to look at. But yeah, hundreds of years before Jesus was even born, and God gave some very specific things about his death.
Seems like the first part of Isaiah is the redemption of like the churches or nations.
Yeah.
And then some
Or judgment against them.
So,
Yeah.
And up through 50, probably 6 or somewhere in there, it comes the Christ and the individual redemption.
Yes. Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't know that. It just seems that way to me.
Huh?
And
Could y'all
like you said,
all hear that? Okay. Making sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. somebody that she knew. I don't know whether you heard it or at home, probably didn't, but man that prayed and asked God for 5 more years, and he was sick, but God healed him and gave him those 5 years, and he got remarried to his ex-wife, and different things happened, and he got a lot of his life straight, and then almost 5 years later he passed away. So God is a merciful God, and God, I think I agree with what Brother Gene said. The specifics of the prophecies in Isaiah are just, there's no, I don't know anybody that could say that it isn't true, because, I mean, they found one of the scrolls that they found, one of the oldest scrolls that anyone has found, original kind of scroll, was of Isaiah chapter 40. And everything in it is exactly what we have today, and it all pointed to Jesus all through the book.
The last part of 52 and 53 could be another gospel.
Yes, that's right.
Take that out and add it, it could be by
Yeah.
itself or by itself.
That's right. 52 and 53 could be another gospel. I mean, it's very, very specific. Isaiah 45, we covered 40 last week. So 45, it mentions in 45, and it's either 45 and 46 or 44 and 45. But it mentions a man named Cyrus. So who is Cyrus?
He was the king of the surrounding, I can't remember which country, but he wasn't Israeli. Persian.
Yeah. I thought I wrote that down just to make sure I would have it. Yeah, in Isaiah 45:1, it says, "This is what the Lord says to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I take hold of, to subdue nations before him, and to strip kings of their armor, to open doors for him, so that gates will not be shut." Babylon or Assyria or Persia, it's one of those. Is it Persia? He was king of Persia. When was he born? Anyone have any idea? He was born about 150 years after Isaiah died. And yet he's mentioned by name in Isaiah 45. 150 years before he ever came, it was even thought of. Before Persia really became a power. And yet God put it in there, anointed his anointed named Cyrus. And if he is a pagan king, which he was, how can he be referred to as God's shepherd in chapter 44 and then later as God anointed in chapter 45?
Proves God can use anybody.
Yes, God can use anybody. The word anointed, a lot of people say, represents only the Messiah. But I think David talked about King Saul and said it was that he was God's anointed king. I think that it was God put him there for a specific reason and gave him the throne of Persia so that he could do the things he did and be the kind of king he was. And God used him, even though he was a pagan, even though he didn't really believe in God. God used him.
It doesn't matter whether the king recognizes it or not, God still uses
Oh, yeah.
whoever he pleases.
That's right.
And he's still in control of the rulers today.
Yes,
Amen.
he still uses it. And I think part of that, especially in the United States where we have a vote, part of that is because of our decisions to put certain people in power, and God allows it. And God still uses that. Uses it sometimes to teach us.
I think he needs a good laugh.
Huh?
I think he needs a good laugh.
So, let's open your Bibles to Isaiah 52. Isaiah 52. So looking at verse 13, it says, "My servant will act wisely. He will be raised and lifted up and highly exalted." Well, Jesus was for a while. I mean, when he first came into places and he was healing people, they proclaimed him the Messiah, right? You had the triumphal entry. He was proclaimed as the Messiah, coming in to save the people. It's really sad that the people could go from Sunday praising him as Messiah to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, depending on how you believe all that, to killing him and asking him to crucify him. But verse 14, just as there were many who were appalled at him, his appearance was so disfigured beyond that of any human being, and his form marred beyond human likeness. That's a pretty apt description of what happened to him. I mean, if you think about all of the different things, he was beaten with a cat of nine tails, which is a leather strap, had bits of bone and metal and even wood kind of things, thorns and stuff in it, and they would whip him, and as soon as it dug into the flesh, the guy would twist it around and then yank it out. And by doing that, it just ripped all of the flesh and stuff off of his back. In fact, Dawson McAllister used to say that his back probably looked like raw hamburger meat. I mean, there wasn't much left there. And they put the crown of thorns, they're Judean thorns, and I think they're about 3 inches long, and they shoved it down so that those thorns pierced his head. It also talks about them beating him with rods. Maybe not as big as a baseball bat, but probably more like a billy club, maybe longer, and they hit him with it. They struck him with their fist in the face. They go up and while he was doing that, and they'd hit him in the face and then say, who hit you? Prophesy it. Tell me who hit you. And every time I read that, I think that person's name, Gaius or whatever, is probably going through Jesus' mind right then. But he didn't say it. He might have said, "I forgive you, Gaius. I forgive you, Brutus," or whoever it was. But I think Satan was putting those names hoping that he would say something, but he didn't. Let me go on down. In chapter 53, the middle verse 2, "He had no beauty or majesty to attract us, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him." He was a typical Jew. It wasn't like somebody that was very, very beautiful or handsome. It wasn't like, a big bodybuilder or anything like that. He was just a normal-looking Jewish man. Yeah, he didn't walk around with a, and that was Renaissance people, I think, that did a lot of that. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by man, a man suffering and familiar with pain, like one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him in low esteem. How many of you, well, I'm going to go meddling here because I've done it too, so I can confess. How many of you have been someplace where you have seen maybe somebody that's homeless and they're dirty and grungy looking, and you just kind of avoid them? You don't even want to look at them. Just try to. Anyone do that? Yeah. That's kind of the way they treated Jesus. They didn't want to have anything to. Didn't even want to look at him.
It's kind of a contrast, the way the people accepted Saul as king.
Yeah. Yes. Head and shoulders. Yeah. That's right. Saul was head and shoulders above everybody else, a handsome man. Everyone looked at him as being, strong and wanted to be like him. But yeah, Jesus was just the opposite.
Hiding to make him king.
I'm sorry?
They had to go find him from hiding.
Yeah.
To make him king.
Had to find him hiding. That was the last thing. Oh, no. He might have done some other things wise or good. But one of the last things he did was hide. I mean, after that, he got kind of prideful and made some really bad decisions. And then the next part we have, we've read this a lot. He took upon He took up our pain and bore our suffering, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted. I imagine that most of the Jewish people there that saw Jesus being crucified felt like it was justified, that they were doing what God wanted them to do. They were punishing this man because the man claimed to be the Messiah. And so they considered it that God was punishing him. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him. By his wounds we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray, and each one of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to slaughter, and as a sheep before the shears is silent, so he did not open his mouth. And that is almost exactly. Now, he did answer Pilate once, I think just once. He answered the high priest because the high priest said, I adjure you by the name of God to tell me if you are the Messiah. And he said, yes, basically that's who I am. So other than that, Pilate was amazed that he wouldn't say anything, wouldn't try to defend anything. Only he told Pilate, that I remember, is, you have the only reason you have authority is that God, my Father, gave you that authority. And so he was silent. And it just goes on and on. And all of this, I think, at least 400 years before Jesus was born. Think about that. 400 years ago. 1600s. There's a lot that's happened in the last 400 years, right? Well, it was more than that because there's 400 silent years, and this was probably another 100 before that, so maybe 500. It is so specific. It just amazes me. And it lets me know that God knows what's going to happen. It wasn't a surprise to God. Nothing that happened to Jesus was a surprise to him. He told everybody about 400 or 500 years before that, right?
I don't really think it was a surprise to Jesus either,
No, I don't think so.
because he said he was here to do the will of the Father, and he asked the Father, if there's any other way.
Right. And I think that was his humanness coming out, because he knew what was getting ready to happen to him.
Well, I think, he took on the sins of the world, right?
Right.
So sin is separation from God. So if he had massive separation, he's never experienced that before.
Yep.
So that was
Yep.
pure torment to him, I think.
Yep. Anything else in Isaiah that you want to talk about? I liked one of the things it talked about in the book was that in Isaiah 60, it talks about the year of God's judgment. I don't remember what they called it. I didn't write it down. And then in 61 is the year of the Lord's favor, and comparing or contrasting the two. But I think all of it, everything goes back to the fact that yes, God is a loving God, but he's also a just God. And because he is a holy God and a just God, he must punish sin, but he's a loving God, so he provided a way so that we wouldn't have to experience that punishment. And then we jump back to 2 Kings and Hezekiah's second prayer. So what had happened? Why did Hezekiah pray? What was going on in his life?
Was he going to be dying?
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was about to die. He was sick, and it apparently had some kind of a boil, or maybe multiple ones, but he had something like that, some kind of a skin thing, along with whatever. And he was about to die, and the prophet came in and told him, put your house in order because you're going to die. And then the prophet walked out. And then while that was going on, he prayed. You all remember what he prayed? I didn't write that down as to where it was. he prayed. Basically, he said, Lord, look at my life. I've done a lot of things that you've called me to do, and yeah, that's not it yet. Yep.
20, chapter 2.
Right. 2 Kings 20, verse 2, it says, or 3, remember, Lord, how I walked before you faithfully and with a wholehearted devotion and have done what is good in your eyes. And he wept. And then God said, okay, I'll give you 15 more years.
Well, the Lord went to Isaiah,
Yes.
Hezekiah, and said, well, wait a minute, go back in there.
Yep. God stopped him and said, go back in there.
Yep.
And he's going to give him 15 more years. And then he asked for a sign. So what was the sign?
Was that with the shadow go down?
The shadow either going down the steps, 10 steps, and the steps are lined up so that typically the shadow would move 1 hour at every step going down or up. And Hezekiah said, well, it's an easy thing for it to go ahead 10 hours. Let's go back 10 hours. How that exactly happened, I don't know. There's been a lot of people talk about that. And yeah. I remember when I was young that somebody supposedly, it was right when computers were becoming really, really popular. And supposedly this guy went in and he put all of the events in history and started working it backwards, and it stopped. And then he remembered those 10 hours, and then it went out again until it stopped again. And then he remembered Joshua asking God to let the earth stand still for a day. And then it went just like it was supposed to. And then I've heard that was all made up. That was not really true. So I don't know how they could. I don't think there's enough historical information to do it that specific. But anyway.
Well, that'd be small, both of those would be small tasks for the creator of the.
Yes, that's true. I mean, and I believe it happened, but I don't know about the guy programming a computer to go back and look at it. That's the part I have a problem with. Yeah.
That's supposedly, they referenced that when they were doing some calculations for the astronauts.
Yeah.
To bring back 13, because if you get to 1792, there's like, they readjusted the calendar and it knocked off like a week.
Yeah.
And they were not calculating that in when they were making the calculations. That may be made up too.
Yeah, I don't know. Yep. And then an envoy, a group of people from Babylon came, and what did Hezekiah do? And showed him everything he had, and then Isaiah came back to him and said, what did you do? And he said, well, I showed him everything. And what was God's judgment about that? By the way, that was a prideful thing. Okay. I don't know that it was the fact that he showed this other thing, these other people, what he had, but it was his pride in saying, look at all what I've got. You can see everything I've got. And then what happened? What did the Lord say?
He told he's going to lose it all,
Well,
but not in his lifetime.
but not in his lifetime. And so what did Hezekiah think about that? Yeah, he said, fine with me. It's not going to happen in my lifetime. I'm not going to worry about it. Yeah, what an attitude. But I hate to say this, but sometimes I think we have that same kind of attitude about other people, or about, as long as it's not my family, or as long as it's not in my life, or whatever, it doesn't matter. And that's just the wrong attitude to have. And we need to pray about that when we have those thoughts. And then he dies, and his son Manasseh takes over. How old was Manasseh when he took over? 12. And what kind of a king was he? Terrible. Evil, wicked king. When was he born compared to Hezekiah's prayer? Yeah, during that extra 15 years. If he would have died, he might not have ever had Manasseh. He may have had a different king, son. So that just kind of, brings up a lot of questions like, why did God let him have that? He knew Manasseh was going to be a bad king. He knew that he was going to lead the children to disobey and to rebel, and yet he allowed it anyway. And I think that goes back to the fact that sometimes he allows us to make decisions, allows us to face the consequences. Hopefully we learned from it. I don't know that they did, but hopefully we learned from it. And don't make the same mistakes over and over and over. Or the same bad decisions, not mistakes, bad decisions.
That's kind of what I was going to say is before they had any kings in Israel, God was their king.
Yes, he was.
And they wanted a king like all the other nations. He's like, okay, we'll give you kings, but I'll show you what that's going to be like.
Yep. And every time we have a presidential election, I think, we got what we asked for. So, as a nation, not individual, but as a nation, we got what we asked for. So, whether you like them or not, right? Okay, well, any other questions, comments? All right, well, let's join hands and we will sing our dismissal chorus. I didn't notice all of that.
We're just gonna do the chorus to Onward Christian Soldiers, so she gets the piano. How you doing, Freddie?
Doing good.
You got a big old Walmart building across the street from